Hello, friends. Welcome to another part of this journey we are making together. I hope you're fine. I hope God's peace is in your heart. I hope the world is not taking you for a ride. It is fond of doing that. I hope your loved ones are fine and you're having a good day. Okay, let us get into it. So we just completed part 4 of this journey where we looked up to the formation of the kingdom of man. Okay, and by man rebelling, that is, by man rebelling, and he starts doing his own things. And really, this is what the next part is about. Part 5, we shall be looking into detail the kingdom of man. What do I mean by this? I mean, now that man sort of disconnected himself from God, he had to start doing everything himself. Okay, he had to find meaning for himself because God was giving us meaning. So he had to start finding meaning of his life for himself, to find his own identity, to find like all this. And of course, we have not done a really good job of this. When I'm talking about the kingdom of man, I'm talking about our current dispensation. Okay, I've always wanted to use that word. I'm talking about our current dispensation, what we are in right now. We shall look at more on this later on, yeah. But from the time Adam disconnected himself from God, Adam had to, as the saying goes, he had to become his own man, and he had to start to find meaning for everything. You know, he had to start finding meaning for everything. And most of us, of course, it can be like, well, that one was Adam. I don't know how many years ago. What about us? You know, like we are 21st. We're in the 21st century. How does that relate to us? And it does. You know, how do I know that we all want it? Like we are all still in the same state that Adam was in. It's because of the things, for example, in our desire for a wholesome love. You know, like why do you think we all crave that? Why do you think we all crave that sort of love which no human being is able to give us? Yeah, no man can give you that. I mean, all of us probably, if it has not yet happened to you, kudos. But for most of us, the first time we fall in love, as the saying goes, the first cut is the deepest. The first time we fall in love, we think the other person is the person for whom this love was meant for. Okay, so we pour our whole selves into this person, and usually they are just human beings too. They have their weaknesses, they have their limitations, and sometimes it's just too much. The responsibility you have just put on the other person is too much. So they skip out of there, you know, and you remain heartbroken. The sort of heartbroken, the kind that you'll never get again. It just happens once. You are so fully and completely heartbroken, and you say to yourself, I'm never loving like this again. What you were desiring for was to love that the only person who is capable of loving, of taking that love and reflecting it, that is God. So that is why we search for it, is because we are still yearning for the Garden of Eden, where we were disconnected from. That's why we do that. That's why our first instinct in that moment is to do like that until we are burnt, and then we learn that, okay, no human being can love me back. Some people never learn that, by the way. Some people never learn that. But for some of us, you do it once and you are burnt and you learn. No human being can love you back, can reflect the sort of love you go and pour upon them, okay? In our desire to surrender. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I'm sure I've read this a number of times and I've spoken to a number of people, and in my own life, we have this desire to surrender to someone who is worthy. Like you want someone else to take control of your life and tell you what to do and how to live it. It is in all of us. And for some, they end up surrendering to I don't know, a political leader, and then they find out, oh, this guy is terrible, he's misusing us. It is so common, however, in religious circles. Okay, like this person, girl, woman, they surrender to a pastor, a priest, because this person is in they stand up as representatives of God, and they are teaching, they seem to be so loving, and this person surrenders, is like, oh, I am going to follow this person wherever they go. And then they are abused, they are, that surrender is abused, and someone starts using you for everything imaginable. But it's not only in religious circles. I mean, anyone who has been following the Diddy trial also knows, like, some people also surrender to people who seem like they have reached, they have achieved the ultimate success on earth. Okay, so there's this desire in us to surrender. Okay, and for some it is to kings, and for some celebrities, for some it is to religious leaders, and you are always going to be burnt, because that surrender was meant, in us it was meant only for God. But since, like, we don't usually have that, we do not have access to him, or easy access to him, we usually end up doing it, wrongly. Okay, in our search to be understood and loved for who we are. Oh my God, this one is so much. You want to be understood and loved for who you are, not for what you do for people. It is in all of us. Okay, you're like, why can't you love me for me? For some people it ends up not being possible, and they edit themselves to suit what they think other people will love, because their confidence is not so much. But there are some who are really, really, have a very high self-esteem, and they are like, I want to be loved for who I am, with my quips. Maybe I love this kind of music. I don't like cooking, and think of whichever example you have. Okay, you can put there. But in that search, we are yearning still for the garden. We are yearning to be back in communion with God, because God, who created you, knows exactly who you are. Like, that is the secret. That's why, like, other people, no matter how much you do it, they will always be like, but why can't you, why can't you be more docile? Why can't you be more outspoken? Why can't you be more assertive? Why can't you be more humble? Why can't you be more arrogant? There is always something a human being will put on you, such that they can turn you into something that they can love, But God does not require you to become anything other than who you are, because he created you, so he loves you as who you are exactly, with the things that you call weaknesses, with the things you call strengths. Since he put all those in you, I remember in the previous part I talked about, you can be a human being, and you have this desire to be in the limelight. And you sometimes, if you have had the terrible religious experience, they will tell you, no, that is pride, that is, But then I said, hey, God understands that, because God himself has been in the limelight. Okay, so if you have that in you, it means you are sort of like sharing in his DNA. And just like there is someone who does not want to be in the limelight at all, they want to serve from the sidelines. Okay, they want to do their best work and no one knows them. That one is also okay, because God has also done that. You see, like, the whole spectrum of human desires and needs, you will find like there is an aspect of them in God. if they are not perverted by the devil, that is, because some of our desires and needs have been perverted by the devil. So we can't really, we cannot really. You can want to be in the limelight to be worshipped. You get? That's not the same thing. Yeah. But someone, you can have a desire to be in the limelight because you feel you have something to share. Or someone can have a desire to be in the shadows because they feel that is where they can do their most work. For some, it is to be teachers. For some, it is to be prophets. I'm quoting the Bible, Paul, I think, in Corinthians. For some, it's to be teachers. For some, it's to be prophets. For some, like different. And all those desires, they are reflected in God. So, in our search to be understood and loved for who we are still seeking. We are yearning. We are yearning for the garden, yeah? In our search for a perfect place, home, or greener pastures. This is one thing that has taken so many people, that they do not understand that what they are searching for is not on this planet. Okay? They fail to understand what they are searching for. Only God can give them. So they search for your greener pastures. Is like you are standing in here and you see across the river or across the valley greener pastures on the hill. So when you leave this place through much struggle and hustle, and you cross the valley and reach on that hill, and when you're on that hill, the pastures no longer look green. The pastures, it could be where you left or on the next hill. That's where the greener pastures are. And if someone can't learn to say, okay, there is actually no greener pastures anywhere. Where I am is where I'm supposed to make this place greener. Okay? Because that was God's pronouncement, judgment, when Adam and Eve rebelled. It is by sweat that you'll get everything you love. So the greener pastures are not in the next, or let me use this example. The greener are not with the next man or the next woman. They are with this man and woman you have. Because if you get tempted and you move on to the next man and woman, you'll find that they too have their limitations. And then the devil will slip in and tell you, no, the greener pastures are with the next one. And so marriage, divorce. By the time you're 50, you have gone through like 3 or 4 times, and you don't understand what you're doing wrong. We are searching for greener pastures. That is in relationships. It's also in work, It is also in places. For example, I'm in Africa and I'm like, oh, greener pastures are in the US, and I go to the US and I find different problems there too. And sometimes you are not courageous enough to say, okay, I'm going back home. You say, I'll now go to the next state. You're always searching for the greener pastures which are never there. Okay, so in our desire to understand and control our fates, when I was thinking of this, when I was coming up with this, this one, it reminded me so much like it's maybe because of our original authority. We were meant to be stewards under the power of God. I think you understand, like, the bigger the person whose power you are under, the more powerful you are. Okay? For example, the Secretary of State for the US has a lot more power than the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Uganda. Simply because the US is a much more bigger country than Uganda. So they are the same offices, but the power each has is different. So when you're a steward, when we are meant to be stewards under God, we would have had inconceivable power. So we would have been able to control so much of our lives. But, well, we lost that too. Okay? Anyways, these are just some of the ones I could come up with. But I'm sure if you sit down and think about it, you'll probably find there are so many others. Things that no matter how much we search for in this world, we don't find them in this life because they were never meant. We lost that, okay? We lost that. Anyway, so the kingdom of man. Okay. I guess to understand it, we have to start with the key figure in it now. Yeah, who man. Okay. And as I said, with our disconnection from our original identity, with our original meaning, the reason for our creation, with our disconnection from that, we had to find different ways. We had to find different ways to give ourselves meaning. So, who is man today? Our understanding of man today. How do we understand him? Because once we understand who man is, how we understand him, it will be easier for us to build on that. Just like how we started with God. Do you remember? As triune in nature, and then from him we went on to talk about his work, and that's how we came up to the creation of earth and the physical realm and man. But now man got disconnected from that very early on in the creation story. Probably 1, maybe 2 years at most. That's usually what I think. Maybe 2-3 years at most is how long Adam and Eve had in the garden before the things got spoiled. Because you remember, they had not yet had their first child, and even 3 years may be many. Yeah. So like, this is a man and woman living together, married, and they had not yet had their first child. So it was very, very early on that man got disconnected from this. So who is man, or who has man been since then? Okay. And really, what we're asking, that we're asking about the origin of life as we understand it today. Like I said, this is our new dispensation. This is the understanding we have, and they are usually, they are very, very many, but you could break them down to 2 major ones. Okay. And the first one is evolution. Okay. The origin of life, how we understand who man is. Okay. The first one is evolution. You could put a clear divide between what scientists believe, not all, but what science sort of teaches, and what religion teaches. And those are the 2 major divides I've made. One side we're talking about is evolution, and what science teaches is that man, of course, by the theory of evolution, which is the most widely accepted because it has a lot of proof. It has collected a lot of proof over the years. A lot of study has been put in it, and a lot of positive outcomes have come out of that study. So evolution is the most widely accepted theory for the origin of man, okay, of who man is. And evolution tells us that about 3.5 billion years ago, we had the first definitive evidence of life on the planet. And then about 2 billion years ago, first eukaryotic cells. Those are cells with a nucleus. Those are the cells we have. About 1 billion years ago, first multicellular organisms appeared. Okay, we know that the very first cells were single organisms. It was just a cell. And then about 1 billion years ago, we are having organisms which have more than one cell. Okay, and then about 600 million years ago, complex animals. Okay, and about 400 million years ago, first land plants and animals. Most of life on the planet is believed to have started in the water. It's only later that it migrated to the land. Okay, so about 400 million years ago, we are having the first plant and animals. So like, animals are migrating from the water to the land now. And then about 300 million years ago, we have the first reptiles. And of course, the first reptiles, this is where the the 300 million, this is when we are having dinosaurs and all that. 200 million years ago, we are having the very first mammals. Okay, very, very small animals, Yeah, and about 6 to 7 million years ago, the last common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees, like when you're following the ancestor of chimpanzees, it was at this point that, like, the branch from which we believe human beings came, that's when it branched off the chimpanzees. And about 300,000 years ago, first anatomically modern human beings. Yeah, where if you go and pick that human being of 300,000 years ago and you, the differences would be very, very little, mainly in structure, but most of the things are similar. So this is, of course, how evolution explains how man came to be. Okay, and like I said, they have a lot of evidence. They have a lot of evidence. You remember, it's Darwin who said, who sort of started this theory of evolution by natural selection. Okay, now the theory itself is quite powerful. Of course, that's why science has taken it on so well, but it also has a lot of limitations. When I was organizing this, I didn't have time to go. I did have the time. I just chose to ignore because there's simply so many things to talk about. So it does have limitations. Like I was saying, I did not put any up, but one, I think, of the biggest, there are so many, but one of the biggest is that it does not really explain the origin of life. Yeah, I'm sure if you have taken the time to study it, you know this. It does not explain the origin of life. It explains that life, how life has changed, through natural selection. Why did a human being, why were we able to outcompete the Neanderthals? Because we had a bigger brain, a bigger frontal cortex, a frontal is it cortex? Cortex, a bigger frontal cortex. So the brain, which is in charge of making analysis, ours was bigger than theirs. So we were able to come up with better plans, and all these things. I'm sure you at one point or another studied natural selection, but that is one of the biggest limitations to it. It does not say where you remember me talking about the you cannot go back infinitum ad infinitum to where. So first definitive evidence of life, but where did this life come from? You get it? That very, very, very fast. And of course we have the two major people who believe this. Okay, the two major groups of people. There are those who it is the only thing they have ever known. Okay, I'm sure Africa not so much, but I'm sure in Europe and the Americas and Asia, China, there are people who the only thing they have learned about is this. They've not had anyone try to explain to them, hey, there's something else that can explain the origin of life. So there's that group. Then there's the other group who says they are the reason they believe it is because they do not want to believe anything else. Okay? There is that group also. For them, they would rather believe a theory, even though it is not completely accurate, as long as it does not include God. Yeah? I mean, they are not. It's not a new story. There has been so many such people since time immemorial. Even in Jesus' time, I mean, there are people even then who refused to believe him. Okay, they completely refused to believe him. Like the evidence was there. He was healing the sick. He was raising up the dead. He was multiplying bread. He was walking on water. The evidence was there to show I am more. Like, look to me and I will lead you to your salvation. And some made a choice to refuse to believe. Judas Iscariot is one of those. Lived with him, saw him do all those things, but still, like, to believe something, you choose to do it. Okay? Because it is no one can convince you to do it. I could bring all the evidence of heaven. If you have chosen not to believe it, you will not believe it. So there are scientists who believe in this theory because they do not want to believe in anything else. Okay, they are there, and you will encounter them many times. And there are some who believe in this theory because it is the only thing they have ever known. Okay, and so some of the limitations of the evolution of the theory of evolution is incomplete fossil record. You know, there are big gaps where like it should say like, okay, this species evolved from this one, but that stage of evolution, those fossils have not been found. And a major one, origin of consciousness and abstract thought. You know, where did man get, because evolution may explain like this, but it does not explain where does man get his conscious thought, where does man get the question, this thing of asking meaning of life. You know, where does man get that? If it were just animals who were evolving, evolution cannot answer that question, because it is a very abstract thought. That is abstract thinking. There's no reason for man to have evolved to get abstract thinking. Yeah. And so many, there are so many. Yeah, so we can just go and read up on it, but this is one of the major ones. I wanted to take time on it because if there is someone out there who is listening to this and is trying to understand Christianity, and they have been force-fed this all their lives, okay, and they are telling them this is the only way you can understand a human being, they're the people I'm telling, like, yes, it is very detailed, it's a very powerful theory. However, it does not explain everything. And one of the major ones, as I said, it does not explain origin of life. It can explain how life has been, how life, animal life has evolved, and plant life and so on, but it does not explain where does that life actually start from. And when you listen to them try to explain that, it will be something like it was random. Okay, it was random, like out of nowhere a bolt of lightning hit something somewhere, and boom, those proteins started joining together, and that's where life started from. It will be something like that, like it was just random, out of nowhere life started. And it is a very terrible thing to explain, to try to show that humanity, we are simply a random occurrence out of nowhere, you know. Anyways, because that too has its own repercussions, we cannot really cover all this in detail. So that is evolution. So on the other side of the aisle, okay, on the other side of the aisle, we have believers in creation, okay, and this one also has different categories. Okay, there is the first category of those who believe that the Bible is scientifically accurate, and they say that creation started about 6,000 years ago with Adam and Eve created in the Garden of Eden. Okay, so this one, it too has its proponents, people who really support it, and they too have their very good evidence why they believe it. Okay, I've tried to listen to people as much as possible without bias, and you learn a lot. Yeah, I would really encourage you to do so. Yeah, go and read up about people who believe creation started about 6,000 years ago. Do I believe it? No. Am I 100% sure that they are wrong? No, I'm not. No one can be in these things. No one can be 100% sure. At least that has been my experience. There's been so many times I thought of something to be very right, and 5 years later I find out, hey, I was wrong. And at that point I was very sure I was right. So do I believe the universe started 6,000 years ago? I don't believe so, because I happen to know that there is something called dinosaurs, you know, and they lived about 300 million years ago, and I love them. Maybe that is the problem. And I love them, you know, like the whole Whenever I'm watching this, I'm a sci-fi nerd. Whenever I'm watching these things and I'm watching Jurassic Park, I'm reading about them, it is mind blowing for me that such a creature existed and no one knew it. Of course, like we have known it, but no one really experienced it as a human being. Yeah, it is mind blowing for me. So, but they have reasons why they don't believe things like dinosaurs existed. They do. So go and check them out. uh Personally, I do believe the Bible. I do 100% believe that the Bible is the word of God. But as you saw, as I did in the previous part, I believe you're not just supposed to read it literally and say like, okay, this is exactly what it is saying. 6,000 years ago, man came, that is what it's meaning. I believe that the message is there, but you do have to put in the work. You have to put in the work and try to tease out exactly what God is speaking there, because the Bible is inspired word but written by a human being. So the human being writes, but because God is just so much, he's omniscient, he's just everything of all powerful, all knowing, all everywhere, blah blah blah, all that. He is able to, even as a human being writes, to have his message inside there. But you have to put in the work. You have to put in the work to tease out exactly what God is saying. Okay? So that's why I unfortunately do not believe this. The only theory, as I was researching all this, that I sort of came to agree with was, they call it evolutionary creation. Because it sort of bridges both gaps of all the human knowledge we have right now. You'll find most of the time people who believe this want to completely disregard what science has said, has discovered. And the people who believe this want to completely disregard what religion has for the last 6,000 years been able to compile. Yeah, the proponents of this. That's why their first argument. Okay, I'm talking about the radical scientists. Like I said, not all scientists, but those radical ones, the ones who do not want to believe anything about God. Those ones, you'll find the very first thing they will try to show is that the Bible is inaccurate. The Bible is just a human words made up. The Bible is just nonsense. It's just a fantasy, because they are trying to disregard it. And the proponents of the Bible as literal, the first thing they also try to disregard is science and everything it has discovered. So I've found that evolutionary creation is something that I myself, because it sort of tries to bridge both, okay? It sort of tries to say, yes, science has discovered this, but this does not negate the fact that God has also worked. So for them, they believe God started it, abiogenesis. God started, like, yes, life may have evolved. I think that's the next point. Yes, life may have evolved like this, but it did not happen by chance. It has been God all the way working behind the scenes, guiding it up to humanity, up to man, up to me and you. Okay? So God started it and God has been guiding it. Okay? And God planned it from the beginning, because when we are looking at it, we saw that when God desired to make man in his image, he created the physical realm. And in creating the physical realm, we find that God he made us capable of supporting the life he's going to start. Okay, you see, like, this theory sort of bridges. It does not remove man's capacity for what he has done, the knowledge he has accumulated, because God made us capable of that. Okay, God made us capable of that. He made us capable of researching. He made us capable of being inquisitive. He made us capable of being logical in our thinking. He made us capable such that you go out and research and make a hypothesis and you try it out, and then you find like, hey, this is true. Okay? Because sometimes you'll find some people, they are trying to put church against science. Like, oh, God hates scientists. Why would God hate scientists then make you capable of doing science? Don't you feel like that's contradictory. Yeah, so God started it, God guided it, God planned it. He made earth capable, and there's this the Goldilocks zone. We're going to look at that a bit more in detail, and science explains how it all happened, but God is the cause. You see why I love this one specifically, because it brings both, like it answers both questions. If you're a scientist and you have truly invested yourself into searching out the truth using science, you'll end up with God. And if you're a person who has never been a scientist and you have simply studied creation, you have studied the Bible and all that, you end up at the same answer. That sounds to me like the sort of thing God would do. Like everything, he puts for us avenues such that in everything we do, we end up where we were meant to be from the very beginning, with him. That's the sort of thing I believe that God could do, or he's capable of, Like I remember sharing earlier that God is a master chess player. Every move he makes, it may seem like it is a loss at that moment, but it is only afterwards when you're looking back, that's when you see and like, hey, this was actually right. There's a story I read that Father Peter Hans Kolvenbach, I don't know if you may not know him, but he was the superior general for the Jesuits, I think, till 2008. And he's the one who told this story. He's like, in a certain monastery, there's an abbot. So this abbot is always telling his monks, hey, like, find God in your life, find God in the things you are doing, find God, and that one day one of the monks asked the abbot, but Father Abbot, have you found God, like, in your life, have you? And that the abbot thought about it for a few minutes and then answered and said, he gave an example from the Bible. He said, when Moses was in the desert, he one day asked God, like, God, can I see you? Can I see your face? Like, I've been doing all these things for you. Can I see your face? And God told him, no, Moses, if you see me, you will die. However, you go and hide in that crevice, and I will pass by you, and you'll see my back. So that's what Moses did. He hid in a crevice. God passed by, and Moses saw his back. And then the monk made his connection. Is like, when I look at my life, I do not see it. Like right now, when I'm here right now, I do not say I have seen God working here. However, when I look back at my life, I can see God. I can see like God has been working. I can see his footsteps in my past. And that for me, like, from when I heard that story, that really agreed with what I already believe about God, that he is where you are at the moment. You may not see him, okay? Like I said, he's a master chess player. Only when you look back and you see, and you're like, what? He really was. He moved that. Once he made that move right there, that's how I've ended up here. Like, let's just look at the history of the church. Yeah. So Christ lives around 33 AD. Christ leaves the church, goes back to heaven, leaves the apostles in charge. Okay. And he tells them to spread the gospel. And the apostles remain in Jerusalem, okay? They remain in Jerusalem spreading the gospel until the Pharisees and the church leadership of the Hebrews starts persecuting them. Then they run out of Jerusalem. And that's how the church does what? Spreads out of Israel. You see? Like, without them being persecuted, we don't know if they would have left. When they were being persecuted, I'm sure they wondered why. Like, is this really going to be the way? And then they go on to be persecuted for the next 300 years. And with every persecution, the more the church exploded in growth. as Tertullian tells us. He's the one who made that phrase that the more you kill us, the more we grow. The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, you know. So the more they are persecuted, the more they are killed, the more they are thrown to be eaten by lions in the Colosseums and all that, the more the church explodes. I'm sure for them at that moment, they must have wondered, is God really here? But he was working. That's why they were exploding. And right up until, I don't know, is it 320? I'm not sure of the date there, when Constantine does what? Emperor Constantine makes Christianity the religion of the emperor. And now suddenly they have full backing of the empire. They explode throughout the entire European continent, even as far back as Africa, and probably other places we do not know. Okay, so they now have the full backing and the money to actually spread Christianity. So this one now helps it to get into structure, to get structured. However, some Christians rebel, some Christians rebel, and they're like, no. Once Christianity joins the government, it's going to become something else. So they rebel and go to the desert. Okay, those are the Anthony of the desert, Saint Anthony of the desert. If you want to go and read about that history. They rebel and go into the desert, and like, no, the church, once it has done this, is going to get spoiled. So we are having two. We're having this church that is spreading by the work of the empire, and we have these ones who are going into the desert. And from those who are going into the desert, it is from them that we get religious life, like all these big congregations that come later on. Actually, as an African, as a Ugandan, who has been treated in hospitals built by missionaries, who has been educated in schools built by missionaries, you can make a connection from the person who built that school right up to some of those people who went to the desert. So it is those that actually started this sense of missionary that we have, the missionary life of the church. It is from those who went to the desert, who slowly turned into religious, and who slowly turned into monks that go around teaching, who slowly turned into missionaries, and into the missionaries that we are seeing today. These ones who remained, like the Christians who were in the church that is supported by the empire, those two also go. They spread, okay? They build the big structures and all that. And you see, like, both routes seem to be rebelling. Both routes seem to be working against each other. But God was still there, working in the background, supporting his mission, okay? I have no doubt in my mind. I'm sure many Catholics will disagree with me. I have no doubt in my mind that the Reformation was also another move, okay? Like, the Reformation happened, and the church, there was a schism. The church completely divided, okay? And we had people go, and it is from that division that we have the Anglican Church, and from the Anglican Church we have had the Pentecostals and the Evangelicals, and all that. They have come from that root, and that too has helped spread Christianity in its own way. The places where the Catholic Church by herself probably would not have reached, these ones have now been able to do so. And they have brought back the love for Scripture. I mean, so much of the music we have right now about Christians is from that line. Like, God is always working. No matter how much it seems messed up, He's always there. That's why, like that abbot said, when I look back and I see, that's why I'm like, wow, God has been there. Okay, so right now we are here, and I mean, you may not see God working, but He is, even in that messed up way. Because now the counter-reformation of the Catholic Church from the Protestancy dividing off by Martin Luther, the counter-reformation from that is what gave birth to Vatican Council II at the end, of course, yeah. So Vatican Council II has opened the church more, that the church is even now able to talk about, hey, there are these issues we need to talk about, like someone has been divorced, someone is a single mother, someone is the LGBTQ, and all these things that the church can even talk about those things, like God is always working. So this is why this theory makes sense for me, that you may not have seen him, but he is in the background, moving, like influencing things ever so slowly, and in the very same way, we shall look at this later on, in the very same way, the devil, you not see him working outright, okay? When someone asks you, where is the devil, you will not see him, but he is too also in the background, working, making sure like that original communion man had with God never happens again. Okay, I've spent quite some time on this. So God planned it, made earth capable of supporting life. How? What is the sign of this? The Goldilocks zone. There are these 10 points that I came up with that make it possible for life to exist on earth. Okay, and the first one, of course, is the Goldilocks zone. You see this, like this. I don't know if the picture seems so. They may be so small on the phone, but the earth, the distance the earth is from the sun, okay, the distance the earth is from the sun is very important. If the earth was closer, slightly closer to the sun, it would be too hot for life to exist. If the earth is farther away from the sun, it would be too cold, okay? That's what we call the Goldilocks zone. It is that distance around the sun where, if a planet is in that place, it has the temperature is just right, enough cold and enough warmth for life to exist. Yeah. The second one is the correct tilt. Most people think of the earth as like it is standing straight, but it's actually bent a little. I don't know if you can see these pictures. It is bent a little. This has also helped us, for the weather patterns that we have. Okay. If it was like this, if I remember well, one side would always be having a lot of coldness, whereas the other side is going to be having a lot of warmth. Okay, if it was straight. However, since it is tilted, every part of the earth gets, I think the only parts which don't get as much light are the North Pole and the South Pole, where one gets 6 months, and then without 6 months it goes without the sun. Whereas the other part, like if the sun is 6 months in the southern pole, the northern pole will not have the sun for 6 months. It's the only place where but that tilt was also important, such that every part of the earth gets and then there is the magnetic field. The earth has a magnetic field. The sun releases a lot of poisonous, I don't want to call them gases. They are ions, okay? There are things that it releases, okay? And our magnetic field is there. It protects us from most of that. This picture did such a good job. That's why I put it here. It protects us from that. Like the rays are coming from the sun. They encounter, like positive, negative, blah, 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 all those things. So our magnetic field, all these things the earth has, and these are, if we did not have a magnetic field, there would be no life on earth. You get it? The rays from the sun would have wiped out everything. Okay? The right atmosphere that allows in just the right amount of heat to come, the sun rays to come in and trap some of it to keep warm, but also release more to go back out. Yeah, that's why they are talking about greenhouse gases. Like we are changing the atmosphere with so much carbon that now our atmosphere is trapping more. But from the beginning, the atmosphere was just perfect. Like it allows in the right amount. It sieves out the UV, the ozone layer sieves out the UV. It allows in the right amount of light for heat and allows more to go back out. Okay. The existence of liquid water. Okay, many planets may have liquid water, so also us having liquid water was also important. Okay, many planets, that one is, I'm not very sure. Plate tectonics, this one I don't really remember the explanation very well, but it is also there. Like the fact that the tectonic plates of the earth keep moving. I think there is a reason that helps. Our large moon, which first of all is big such that it protects earth somehow, but it is also very good for maintaining the tides. The tides are very important for life, for life on earth. When I was researching this, I was mind blown. Okay, so earth's gravity with the right atmosphere, I talked about atmosphere already. So earth's gravity, the gravity of the earth is just right that it holds the atmosphere that we are supposed to have. Okay, the ozone layer, I've spoken about that. It allows it sieves out the UV lights, allows in just the right amount of light that we need, and a calm neighborhood. Our sun is somewhere there, and our planet is also nearby there. So we are in a calm neighborhood of the galaxy, yeah, where it is not, there's no black hole near us or anything. So all these, for life as we know it happen on earth, all these had to be, not one, no, like if any three of these were missing, probably life on earth would not be. You get how mind-blowing that is, okay? Like, I don't know, most you may find a planet, like they were saying, the moons of Jupiter have liquid water. They may have liquid water. Mars at one point, they believe, had liquid water, but it did not have probably the right gravity or the right atmosphere, or maybe its magnetic field, or maybe it was wrong. It is just slightly out of the Goldilocks zone. So all these 10, actually there are way more, I just picked the big ones. All these had to be for life as we know it, okay? For life as we know it on earth to exist. If some of these were not, probably life on earth would not be what it seems like, if it would have been there at all, okay? So like this, when we are talking about the argument for design, for the evidence of God, we say that, hey, this argument for the design, you just look at how many things had to be perfect for life on earth to be, okay? So that is why we believe that, yes, God, he may not have been out there like everywhere showing you, yes, I'm God doing all this. He was in the background. That's why everything just ended up being perfect, all right, let us continue. Now we go to the meat of it. I hope you're not already tired. Now we go to the meat of it. So we start with Genesis 2. Then the Lord God formed the man out of dust from the ground, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. We talked about this in the last part, okay? Like the two stages for the formation of man. Now, like, this is now my belief, okay? Before I was just sharing generally what people believe. Then I talked about evolutionary creation. Now I'm telling you why I believe what I believe, okay? What I believe about who man is. And there you can see from this verse that there are two major things that we look at, okay? The first is that God formed man from the dust, okay? I remember I talked about this in part 2, in the last part, before part 4. So God formed the man from the dust. This one there, he's talking about the body. He formed the body from the dust, okay? So we know, like, one, a human being has a body which is formed from the very place where God is going to put him, okay? So it is going to be made up of atoms and matter, because he's going to make man in this realm, okay? And then he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and now God imparts onto man something new, he imparts onto man something uniquely God is. You remember, God is not human. So when you first read this, you may think God is breathing. No, God is not human. He does not have a body. So when they're saying he breathes onto man, this verse is saying God imparts onto man something of himself. And that is what I believe is the Spirit, okay? God imparts onto man something of himself. So now man has a body, and then God imparts into him his spirit. You remember I've shared this so many times already. So that the uniqueness of who man is that he is both born of the physical, the body, the physical realm, and the spiritual. He is the unity of both, okay? And man became a living creature. So this is how, first we have the body. Like, remember we are defining who man is, okay? We have a body. That one, you agree with me. If you're listening to this, you probably have a body. And the body is made up of 46 chromosomes. The cells of your body, I should say that. Your body is made up of cells, trillions and trillions of them. And those cells carry in themselves 46 chromosomes, which dictate how your body is. How did these 46 come about? 23 from each parent. I don't know if you know this biology. So your mom gave you 23 chromosomes, like in the ovum, okay? In the ovum that your mom gave, there were 23 chromosomes. In the sperm that your dad gave, there were 23 chromosomes, okay? These two came together to make one cell made up of 46 chromosomes. If you don't know, this is how we define the human body by its DNA. You get it? That's how the whole thing of DNA these days is a rev, you know. See, your DNA is different from the other one, and like your DNA is very unique. But your DNA is the written word of how your body is supposed to look like, okay? So when your 23 chromosomes in the ovum met and joined with the 23 from the sperm, together they made one cell, okay? At your conception, there was one cell made up of 46 chromosomes. And that cell is you. Because from that moment on, that cell was self-driving. It did not need any other, like, added information, okay? Yes, it needed a place to grow. That is usually in the womb. Yeah, it needed a place to grow. But from that one cell of 46, life just started for that cell, because that one cell divided into two, and those two divided into four, the 4 divided into 8, the 8 divided into 16, 16, 32, 32, 64, and so on and so forth, until the body of a baby was formed from those cells dividing, okay? So they divided and divided, made 1,000, 1,000,000, 2,000,000, 5,000,000, and then at one point they start specializing, like, okay, these cells are going to make the skin, these cells are going to make the bones, these cells are going to make the eyes, the brain, the mouth, the lips, the nails. They specialized like that, eh? So 6 months, 9 months, by 9 months, they are, okay, I should have researched that, how many cells a baby carries at 9 months, but they are probably already in the trillions, or in the billions at least. They are probably already in the billions. And that is the newly formed baby, you know, the one who is born and then continues growing, right up until they die. So the body is formed out of this. That's why, like, science has been able to prove this so well, because we have been able to study our bodies, eh? So that is how the body is formed. Now comes the second part, according to the Bible, the spirit, the life spark. You remember, God formed the man from the dust. That is the body he formed, okay? And then he breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. That is the spirit. Like, the body is there, God breathes into him. He breathes into him and gives him the spirit, you know. And the spirit is God, like God is spirit. So it is like God got a part of himself and put it into man. That's what they meant. Let us make man in our image and likeness, okay? They imparted into man a part of himself. So we have a body, we have a spirit. But these are not the only two things that make up a human being, right? There's a third one. And I believe, like, this is the soul and mind. It is the formed from the cumulative experiences of the person. So, like, your mind is what we call the soul. For the longest time, okay, people were like always mixing up, for me at least. You listen to one person, they are talking about the soul. Another person, they call it the spirit. Like, so I wanted to take time and really study this, research it, pray about it. And this is what I came up with for myself, okay? Like man is made up of a body. That one we all know. That man is made up of a spirit, okay? That is the one God gives him. And the soul and mind is what comes as man learns. You know, like what makes the Daniel of 20 years ago different from the Daniel of today. It's because the Daniel of 20 years ago didn't have a lot of experiences. The Daniel of today has a lot. Even the Daniel of five weeks ago is different from me. Because that one of 5 weeks ago, there are things he didn't know that this Daniel knows. You know, the difference between you and who you were 2 years ago, who you were 5 years ago, who you were 10 years ago, is that you have accumulated experiences over that time. And those experiences is what we call your soul, or as commonly we refer to as the mind. Okay? And this, at least I'm certain, I'm glad science has been able to teach so, starts right from the womb, agreeing with this one. Okay? Starts from right the womb, because you have had that. I'm sure if you have not, then you get it from me now. But now psychology is saying from as early as 3 months, the baby is able to tell, the baby is able to tell the dad and the mom. And from as early as that time, if the mom is unhappy, or if the mom is fighting with the dad, or if that will influence the baby. It means from as far back as that, the baby's soul and mind is being formed. Yeah, the baby's soul and mind is being formed. And their outlook on life later on will depend on a bit, not always, a bit, on some of the things that happened to the mother as she was pregnant. And then, of course, they are born, and then they start experiencing life. And that also changes who they are, changes their outlook. So the soul and mind, when we are usually talking, the soul and mind we are talking about is, usually it's the person we are talking about, okay? When we say that person is very joyful, we are talking about this, okay? Or that person is very analytical. That person is very this and is very that. We are talking about our experiences of who they are. But that is not all they are, okay? So that means, when I was thinking of this, I thought we could use computer language, since it is something we are all used to. So this would mean like the body is, if you're using a phone, the body is equal to the phone that you're having, okay? The spirit is equal to the electricity that is in the phone, or the laptop or computer, okay? The power that is running the computer. So you may have a very good body, like you have a very good computer, very good phone, but without this, the electricity, it will be off. Those are the two things that start it, okay? And then the soul and mind would be the software running in it, okay? If you have a computer, this would be something like Windows now. Windows, we are now at Windows 11. At one point we had many people are still using Windows 10, but before that there were Windows 7 and Windows X Vista and all this. Like just how software keeps on growing, it is the same way how our mind, our soul keeps on growing. You have to grow out of the things that you believed were right. You have to be humble enough to learn new things. With every new thing you learn, something in you changes. Like literally, it has been proved by science. The brain, okay? The brain, every new thing you learn, a new pathway in the brain is opened up, okay? So for me, this is man really, okay? Man is all these three. You get? Man is not just a body. Man is not just the spirit which is powering the body. Man is not just the soul which is in the, which man is all three. Okay? He is the body, soul, and spirit together. That unity. That's why I put man here in the in this set of how this part here, how do they call it? That is all three of them together. That is who man is. That means if any one of these things is missing, that person is not a human being. Right? Because a spirit and soul or mind, that this one here would be an angel. Okay? Because we know that angels are spirits, but they also have a will. By the way, our will is here, yes? Like our desire to do things. That's what made Satan fall, because he desired something that was not appropriate with God. So this box here would be for the angel. A spirit and a body alone without a soul, this one here is a zombie. Yeah. This is what, if zombies exist, this is what a zombie would be. Because a zombie is just a body with a body which has life. Okay? A body with life, but without a soul. And a body and soul without a spirit, I do not know what I would put here. Probably doesn't exist. Yeah? So, all three of these have to be there when, for someone to be called a human being. Okay? So at I'm sorry I keep saying so much. I've just realized I was recording this. So Jesus Christ. At birth, at your creation, at your where you started from, you who is listening to this, your mother brought 23 chromosomes, your father brought 23 chromosomes, and together they formed the first cell. That first cell was powered by the Spirit of God, such that that first cell can start multiplying. Because you think about it, like logically think about it, the ovum only lasts 24 hours by itself. Okay? That's what the monthly period of a woman is about. Every 20, the ovum comes, nothing, there's no fertilization, it dies. And the period comes out and it restarts again for the next month. So the ovum only lasts 24 hours. The sperm lasts 7 days. So both of them are on a time clock. After 7 days, the sperm dies. After 24 hours, the ovum dies. Does it make sense that these two coming together would be able to make one cell which goes on to last 80 years, 90 years? Like, does that make sense? Like, where does the energy that starts fueling it from then on, where does that come from? The life, not the energy. The energy can come from food. I'm talking about the life that is fueling it. Remember, the ovum also is getting energy from the body, but it still dies after 24 hours. So that's why I believe like that first cell gets the spirit, the very Spirit of God, the one he gave Adam, gets that spirit. And then that first cell starts dividing. And at a certain point, maybe after 2 or maybe 1 week or 2 weeks, the soul and mind starts developing. At first is a wisp, but by 3-4 months, by 6 months, the baby can move when he hears the father speak. That means that baby, even though the body is not completely formed old how we are used to, that baby is at that moment with a soul. Okay? So the soul, as I would say, I'm not trying to say that the soul of the after these two coming together, the soul comes in after like 2 weeks, because that one would sort of make me heretic. No, all three come at once, just that the soul keeps on developing. Okay? The soul keeps on developing. Like, that's why you are 80 years, you are still learning, your soul is still developing. At 90 years, you are still learning, your soul is still developing. The soul never stops developing as you learn, as you experience things. Anyway, so this is who man is for me. A body, soul, and spirit. Spirit from God, body from the physical realm, soul formed from the experiences you go through. These two you may not have a say, but this one you have 100% say of what you end up becoming. And that is who man is. So, I hope I've done a good job here. This one reminds me of this. Yeah? Like when I was researching this, I saw and I'm like, hey, it makes sense, right? It makes sense actually. I would do it like this. Yeah? Like this being like God is three persons who make one God. God is three. Okay? Three persons who are one God. Okay? Just like we are three parts that make man. It sort of like makes sense to me. Like I was making these connections afterwards as I was continued trying to develop this theory. Yeah? There are three. And the Father being like equivalent, like being related to the Spirit, because the Father is the one who gives the Spirit. The Son being the revealer of God. Our bodies reveal who we are. Like, how do you know someone? How do you differentiate Dennis from Duncan, from Denise, from all these other days? It is because their bodies are different. So just like the Son is the revealer of God, the body reveals you. And the Holy Spirit, the implementer of God, is just like how our soul and mind is. Everything you want to achieve, you have to have a will to achieve it. You say, I want to run I want to do 2 laps around the field. You will it and you start practicing and you keep encouraging yourself until you can run the 2 laps around the field. So the soul is like the implementer of man, just like the Spirit is the head of these three. I hope we are together. So who is man for me? Man is triune. You know, he's triune. His body, soul, and spirit. He's not just any one thing. This was important for me because it sort of negated some of the things that some churches, not all, but some churches teach, and some people teach really. Okay? Most scientists teach that man is just body and soul. Like this aspect is not there. The aspect from God is not there. That man is just body and soul. When you die, the body dies and the soul dies, and that's the end of it. It's a terrible thing to teach people that, you know, because it means their life really means as much as their life will last on earth. Okay? It will have no any other effect. But for me, I believe when the body dies, at the moment it dies, the spirit which is from God and the soul are still together. These are what go before God. And when the end of time, if you know some of this, at the end of time, man shall get a glorious body. So the glorious body will now go back and join this to again make you fully you. Why would man need to get a glorious body? Because a human being is body, soul, and spirit together making up man, okay? And then there are some now religious sects that teach, although the body is bad, the spirit, sometimes they mean the spirit, sometimes they mean the soul, the spirit is good, the body is bad. That one I also don't agree with, okay? Because why would it be bad why did God create it if it was supposed to be bad, you know? So our bodies are not bad. The desires the bodies has are appropriate to the body. The body is supposed to have those desires. Yeah, some people hate themselves when their body like desires to have sexual intimacy. That is part and parcel of being a body. The body must have that. You just control, okay? You just control how you do it. But that is part and parcel of it. At one point, you remember, even the Catholic Church herself, at one point you were supposed to, okay, I don't know whether that is true, but back then, I think you are supposed to beat yourself each time you thought of that. Like, that is so terrible. That is part and parcel of the body. The body craves those, just like it craves hunger, just like when you're tired, you rest. All these desires come naturally. They are appropriate for the body. Just like there are desires that are appropriate to the spirit, I should not call them desires. Things that are appropriate to the spirit, that the spirit must get, and things that are appropriate for the soul, that the soul must get. Alright, so we continue. So, okay, let's look at some of those. What are things that are appropriate for the body? The body at the beginning, yeah. I don't know if I did it here actually. That's why I still encourage. Please go to that site. Yeah, go to that site. I don't know if you have picked the go and pick the book, because when I was writing the book, it was easier to add all this. Not so much with video and recording and all this. There are simply too many things to talk about. Yeah, but I think in the book I went to some detail about all this. Yeah, so the body at the beginning, when Adam was created. When Adam was created, his body was in perfect health. There was no sickness and there was no corruption. This was what was appropriate for it. To tend and care for creation, like this is what was normal for. You need your body, you need your muscles to dig and to rescue an animal, to rescue a cat that has been stuck in a tree. You need your body. And what was appropriate for the soul? A clear understanding, peaceful emotions, and a will directed to righteousness. This is who Adam was. Okay? And Eve. Adam and Eve were at the beginning. Okay? Their soul had a clear understanding of who they are. You remember? We go back to the last part. The minute they ate the fruit, they looked at themselves and they were naked. Something changed here. The understanding stopped being clear. Peaceful emotions where it is today is jealousy, tomorrow is hatred, the other day is vindictiveness, the other day is feeling small. Like that is us today, but that's not who we were. And a will directed righteousness. Everything you wanted to do was for the glory of God. Okay? To be the mind of God. That's who we were supposed to be. We are supposed to be the mind of God, to have the same mind as God, image and likeness. So Adam and Eve at that moment, they were seeing nature in exactly the same way God was seeing it. There would have been no exploitation, because there would have been no need for exploitation. Man was seeing nature in exactly the same way. Of course, this is no longer true. And then the spirit, fully alive, okay, dwelling in communion with God and in his presence. This sort of actually give us clues about what is appropriate for each of these parts of man. Okay? The spirit, since it comes from God, it craves, yes, it craves being in communion with God. Okay? The soul, which is meant to study, to grow, is always going to be moved by its will to learn, to be curious, to, and the body, which is meant to, like, the movement, the whole thing of procreation comes from it. It's going to want food to sustain itself and sexual desires to procreate itself. Okay? So the spirit, as what we are talking about, fully alive, dwelling in communion with God and in his presence, worshipping God with everything Adam did at that moment. He was worshipping God in the work he was doing, in the love he was sharing with his wife, in talking to God. Like his whole life was a worship of God. That was the original plan. Actually, I think that's what I put here. Yes, that was the original plan. This is who man was supposed to be. Okay? But then something happened, right? Man got disconnected from God and slowly he turned. Okay? He turned. And what happened then? Okay? This one is an attempt to now explain what our life is like today. You remember we are talking about the kingdom of man, yeah? Our new dispensation. This one is supposed to explain how we are today. So our bodies, they became subject to pain, disease, and death. The death God was talking about, that when you eat this tree you will die. It was not just death in like we are getting disconnected from him, but it was also the death of the body. We would no longer, because being in his presence was what was giving us life. Okay? So we have now a body subject to pain, disease, and death. That is why when Christ came, he would always heal these things, because they were not the original. Christ was always working, Jesus Christ was always working like he was saying, I want to show you what you were at the beginning. So whenever he met someone, that woman who had been suffering with pain for 12 years and hemorrhage, she touched him and she got healed. He healed so many people with diseases, chief among them leprosy, and he resurrected a number of people who were dead. Why did he do that? He was trying to say, this is not who you were meant to be. Me now, Jesus Christ now, who has the power to change it, he would change it, okay? And stewardship would continue, but with toil and pain. That is our dispensation, as I already shared before. Like now, we work to live such that we can live to work. That was not the original plan. That is not how things were meant to be. But it is what happened. And it is why things are the way they are right now. So the body which was supposed to be used to help and work and do all those things now suffers from pain, disease, and you suffer, you toil to get anything. The body has to sweat, okay? And there is the soul and mind. It darkened, the understanding darkened, the emotions disordered, and the will got subjected, got coupled with sin. Huh? Our understanding darkened in that we no longer saw things as they are. That's why we exploit the earth, you know. That's why we exploit the earth. That's why someone can calmly destroy an entire ecosystem just because they want to get oil from it and make money. That's why someone can start a war. I mean, this is what we know right now, like what our experience right now. Someone can start a war. They have started wars, not someone. They have started wars in order to make wealth of that. You know, we have seen Congo. Congo has been in war since time immemorial because of the wealth they have in their land. Like someone is there funding this, very well knowing. Children are being killed, women are being killed, men are being killed, entire generations are being destroyed. The future of that land is being... They know all this, but they're saying, for the money that is there, I will cause the death to continue. You know, what is happening in Gaza, what is happening in Ukraine or Russia, like all these wars we are having over, that comes from our darkened understanding, our disordered emotions, yeah? You can boil down nearly every war to someone who being proud somewhere. Every war, you can boil it down to that. When you go to South Sudan, I'm sure when you talk to those people, they will give all sorts of reasons, but at one point or another, they were like, how could that person underlook me? Like, I am the one who I was the foundation for this thing to happen, for South Sudan getting its independence. How could they, you know? So disordered emotions and will subject to sin. How did Paul say it? He said, even though I don't want to sin, but I end up, the things I don't want to do are the ones I end up doing. This has been, I'm very sure, the experience of very many people. At your wedding day, you make vows and you say, I'll love and cherish you till death do us part. 5 years in, 6 years in, you're the one cheating. And for the life of God, you cannot understand why you are doing it. Okay? Or religious, or all these people, you know, you want to be a good person, but somehow it is the wrong that you do. It is a will that is subject to sin. You cannot help yourself but be that. Yeah. And we have put man at the center. You remember, God was supposed to be at the center. We were at the center because we were a reflection of God, but we were never supposed to take that on. The glory of God was supposed to pass right through us. Okay? Like someone comes, if you have ever had someone use this sentence, that's what they are meaning. You tell them, you sing so well, and they say, oh no, all glory to God. That's what they're trying to mean. Eh? They are saying, no, don't give it to me. I am doing like this because it is God who gave me the gift to do like this. All glory to God. But now we are at the center. Okay? We want to be at the center, actually. We want to be at the center. Okay? I think if you're already clicking, being clued in into whose character we took on. When we disconnected ourselves from God, whose character did we start taking on? Okay, we want to be at the center. We want to be like God. I'm sure if you have had the experience of having ultra rich people, you'll find like this is their way of looking at things. Like, oh, no, I'm special. Like, I am okay. Not all. Also, not all. Okay, not all. But when people are very, very wealthy and they are very, very powerful, this thing starts creeping in that, hey, I am like God, At the wave of my hand, people die, people are raised. I can save entire nations and, I am like God. But it's not just for the ultra wealthy, it's even for the small person. You go to any family where the man thinks is the beginning and end of all. He enters the home and he says, what I speak is what must be done. Whether you are the woman, the mother in the home, whether you are the children, you're like, man at the center. There are so many other examples I can give for this, but I don't need to, because you have experienced this, okay? Where you feel you must be praised for what you do, even though, like the girl who walks around very, very beautiful and she wants to be praised for that. You didn't do anything for the beauty. Anyways, and the spirit, of course, it got separated from God. That's the first thing that happened. And then there was perverted worship. Oh, this one we are very well, like we have very good experience of it. Perverted worship. It is either worship of self, like what I was sharing up there. You want to be worshipped. How many pastors, this one is very true for them. Pastors, even priests definitely. Even some, not all. How many have you seen, like, you look at how they talk and they seem like they have replaced God in their churches. They have sort of replaced God. Perverted worship. They are craving the worship. They want to receive the worship that is due to God. And they sometimes are able to. They're able to manipulate the people who come to pray from them. They're able to manipulate them. And these people start, it seems like this person, between God and this person, since I know this person, I would worship this one more. So worship of self, worship of others. So the perversion of worship is also you who's choosing to worship someone else other than God. Okay? You're worshiping another pastor, you're worshiping a celebrity, you're worshiping money. Okay? In the Catholic Church sometimes, and please I hope no one comes with knives at me, sometimes, and maybe because of not being taught, we have a tendency to also worship others who is not God. We fail to make the distinction of venerating Mary, venerating the saints, worshiping God. Like that distinction in our head fails to come in. And you find the way you relate with God is exactly the same way you are relating with Mary, and exactly the same way you are relating with the saints. Your worship there needs to be corrected, okay? You need to be corrected and taught who deserves worship and who deserves veneration. We venerate Mary and the saints because they were human beings, and because through their work and efforts they were able to enter into heaven. That's why we venerate them. Just like on Olympics, you shout for someone who has just won a gold medal. Through their hard work, they have won it. So it's the same way we venerate saints and Mary. We worship God, only God. So, like, I cannot really go into detail, but we'll have to find a way to, make that distinction in the words you use, in the prayers you use, in the actions you do, to show that this is veneration, this is worship. Okay. So this is now this is our dispensation. This is what it is like. We struggle. The human being struggles because everything about us is fallen. Okay, when man was falling, it's not just one part which fell. That's what I was trying to mean here. The body fell. That's why it became diseased. The soul fell. By the way, that's why when Jesus came, he taught. He spent 3 years teaching, trying to change how they looked at life. You remember, he comes and he says, do not worry. Don't worry about tomorrow. God who created you will look after you. You see, he looks after the sparrows. He looks after the birds. Okay? He if he's able to look after the sparrows, why do you think he's not going to be able to look after you? Because when you worry, you'll end up doing things that are wrong. So he was trying to elevate our soul, okay? So he healed our bodies. He taught us, try to elevate our mind, to change how we looked at things, okay? You remember the very first words he told in Matthew after coming back from his temptation in the desert was, repent. And repent in that sense is change your mindset. Change how you look at life. Change the way your thoughts, change your thoughts. That's what repent means. I know today it means something different, but when you go and look at the original translation of that word, that's what he meant. Change how you think. And then he goes on to teach us how we are supposed to think. Okay? And then the Spirit, he does give us a spirit. You remember? He does give us a spirit at Pentecost. I'm coming to this too early. At Pentecost, he does give us a new spirit. But we shall look into all that in more detail. Okay? So, that is how the kingdom of man is. Because of the disconnection from God, we say that man has a fallen nature. Everything about us is fallen. That is why it is not possible for man to go back to God by himself. That is why God had to send someone from heaven to save us. Are you getting? I'm trying to make the logic of God understood. Why God did what he did, okay? Because nothing about us is still united with him. Our soul is darkened, our body is fallen, and our spirit is disconnected. And that is who man is. These three parts together is who man is. So that's why Christ, you remember him making that phrase, can two blind men lead each other? They will lead each other straight into the hole. He's trying to mean the very same thing. That you, man, by yourself, you had no capacity to save yourself. I have no capacity to save myself. You have no capacity to save yourself. Every action you do, no matter how well intentioned, will still be tainted by your fallen nature. I mean, you know this if you have been honest with yourself. You know it that you get money to go to give to someone in charity, and this is a part of you saying, I hope someone sees me doing it. Because you want to be recognized for the good that you are doing. Yet it's not supposed to be like that. You remember, Jesus was saying, don't let your right hand know what your left is doing. Because the other person for whom you are giving, for them they just need food. Why should your helping of them be for you like a photo op, a chance for you to become a celebrity and all that? So everything about us is tainted. That's what we mean by a fallen nature. If you have been there and you have never understood what this means, okay, I've had some people sharing, I try to listen to everybody as honestly as possible. And someone comes and is like, Christians are always saying humanity is fallen. Of course humanity is fallen. And they usually say this when they're trying to show off, like someone is singing so beautifully, But you're like, hey, are you looking at humanity as we are looking at it? Are you looking at how many people are dying because of wars? How is it possible that in the same country there can be someone dying of obesity and another person dying of malnutrition? You must see this and think there is something very wrong with humanity. Why is that possible? Someone is dying of obesity and someone is dying of malnutrition in the same place. And it is common. I mean, we have seen it. These days it is everywhere. How many people have you hurt without looking at the big things? How many people have you hurt just for your own self, I know I have done so many times. I've done so many times, just because we recognize that we are fallen, that I am fallen. Everything I do is, yeah. Isaiah says it like this: we have all become like one who is unclean, and all our righteous deeds are like polluted garment. All our righteous deeds, because even when we are trying to do righteous things, that's what Paul was saying. When we are trying to do righteous things, it is the our fallenness still taints them. Okay, it still taints them, because there is always something in you that wants to be self-serving, something in you that wants to be at the center. Yet it's not about you, it's not about me. Okay, there is no one, this is Romans, there is no one righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands, there is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. That is who we are. That is why it necessitated God sending someone to come and save us. It had to be so. Because by ourselves, even with the best of intentions, we could not do it. Yeah. So, when we are talking about fallen nature, there is this question. When I was sharing this with my brother, he brought it up, and I thought I would answer it here. Why do we say Adam's sin, okay, Adam and Eve's sin affects us, And it doesn't seem fair, right? It doesn't seem fair, but it is because we are from him, okay? Just like we received the good from him, we also received the bad. So we received the stewardship of earth, broken as it is, from Adam, because God gave it to him. God gave it him, so we received the stewardship from Adam. And so we are able to be stewards, to co-create, to build, to all these things humanity does. But we don't only just receive that, we also have to receive the negative that he did. That is how families is, isn't it? A parent is an alcoholic, and they sort of transfer that to the children. And you find one of the children has also become an alcoholic. And then that child also goes on and transfers it to. So it is like that. A violent father ends up somehow giving birth to violent sons also, because they have experienced him. So that is like today, explaining it in today's terms, what is in spiritual terms what happened, that we sort of picked on, we took on the sin of Adam just as much as we took on his blessings. But we shall look at this in more detail, like very specifically how it happened, okay? And then there's another question that has also been very common about this, but like that, this fallen nature, does it make sense? And there are two ways you can look at this, okay? The first one is like, we fail but can be saved. Now, this one means, like at one point in humanity's journey, at one point, of course, the Bible calls that person Adam and Genesis. But even if you're like, oh, I don't believe in the Bible, at one point in humanity's journey, something happened that changed how the world looked like for us. For Christians, for us, that is Genesis, that is Adam. Okay? At one point in humanity's history, something happened that made us, that changed everything. That is one way you can look at this. Or the other way you can look at it is that, no, this is how things are supposed to be. But if you take this route, if you take the route like the way things are is how things have always been, that means like there is no fallen nature, there is no Adam and Eve, there is no God. Like that means humanity as it is right now is how it has always been. It is how it will always be. And that is terrible, because we are terrible people. I have just spoken about people starting wars in order to benefit. I've spoken about people, slavery. I've spoken about people selling others. Like, you cannot see all that and think, well, this is how humanity is. Because you see, the problem with that thought is, that means those people are right to do what they do. You get it? If all there is in life, if all there is that I have my life, I'm going to live it 60, 80, 90 years, then I die. And after that, nothing. Then I must do everything possible to make sure the life I have, short as it is, I enjoy it. If that means I start a war somewhere and 100,000 people die, so what? I'm getting money, I'm getting rich, I'm living well. Their death means nothing to me. What? They are also going to die, and I'm going to die in the end. That is it. Like, once you die, you just go back to the ground and zero. So the life we have, the only thing that I would have to look after is the life I'm having right now. So I can do whatever I want, and it would be right that I do so. So I break into your house and I kill you and I take your money. That is okay, because you have gone back to nothingness, and I'm also going to go back to nothingness when I die. Why should your life have any? Why should your life matter more? Why should you be rich and I'm suffering? Yet I can take it from you. That is what this life means. When you're saying this is just life, like these scientists who are like, oh no, it's just evolution, and it just happened. It just happened by everything about human life is by chance. This is what they are saying. They are saying that our life really is just by chance. So if you have money and I can take it from you, I should be able to do so, such that I can make the little life I'm having right now enjoyable. And if you die in the process, well, I'm also going to die at one point, and that's it. However, if there is more to life, if there is more to life than what we see, that means at the end of this all, we will go before God and He will tell us, well done, my good and faithful servant. Yes, you died such that that child can be saved. And now that child is going to go on and help so many other people. And for that, I'm proud. Welcome home. Like, our life only gets true meaning when we know that at the end of it, there is someone who will going to welcome us home and say, yes, you did well. Or if you messed up, if you started wars and you killed people, and you go before Him and He says, my son, I love you, but you were a terrible human being. For that, go and be banned forever. That is the language, at least. And yeah, so that is it. That is the fallen nature. So that's why I believe, and that's why Christianity really teaches us that we fail but can be saved. Okay, we fail but can be saved. Like, God made a move for us to be saved, and that is really going to be what I guess we'll be talking about next. Our salvation, or if it's not that, we'll be talking about the one who caused our fall. I think that one is more appropriate. So thank you so much for sticking out. This has been an extremely long one. I thought the one of yesterday was long. Okay, not yesterday. Maybe for you it's not yesterday. The one part 4 was long, but this one has been longer. But like, these two were their foundational. The others are going to be building on this. Okay, the others are going to be building on this. So I guess that's why this had to be so long. Okay, so thank you so much, and see you in the next one.